Hi, Nick Doganor State Law. We safeguard your professional license so you can get back to business. Today, we're going to be taking you through the North Carolina Physical Therapy Board's disciplinary process. That's going to be from the start of the process when a complaint's filed all the way through the end when there's a resolution and everything in between. So, this is one of the better boards that I have had the pleasure of being in front of, to be quite frank. I feel like this board is fair. They're not pushovers by any stretch of the imagination, but they're fair when it comes to the licensees. They take their job seriously, and they have a very smooth process. Process starts with the licensee receiving a copy of basically two-page cover letter, maybe one-page cover letter if there's not much to the actual complaint, and the complaint itself attached to that cover letter from the board's attorney to the licensee, and that is sent via U.S. certified mail to the licensee's physical address. So it's going to be the address that's on file with the board. So you want to make sure that you have your contact information, including but not limited to your mailing address, up to date with the PT board, because if you don't, A, that's a violation in and of itself, and B, you're not going to be able to get certain documentation that's going to be really, really, really important to you. So, all right, let's see that unfortunately you get one of these envelopes, you sign for it, and you open it up, and it says, "Hi, Miss Jane Smith, it has been alleged that on such and such date that you XYZ, and it's a violation of, administrative code XYZ." All right. What's going to be contained within that letter is straight out the gate. At some point, we will ask you to participate at the board's office for an investigative committee meeting. And what that is each board has an investigative committee, and it depends on the board as how the investigative committee is done up. Some boards are like the PT board, and they have like a member of the board, executive director, the attorney for the board, and investigator. Other boards, like the nursing board, no board members are actually in this investigative committee meeting, from my understanding. I'm certainly not there, so I don't know exactly who participates, but what I've been told over many, many years is that with the nursing board, it's you got some people that are other investigators, and they sit around the table with attorney staff, and they go over stuff and come up with recommendations. So the PT board is more of what you would typically see from most boards with their investigative committee. The thing that makes theirs is a little bit unique is part of their investigative process. Instead of sending an investigator over to speak with a licensee or having a phone call set up with the investigator and the licensee, they have the investigator there with them. They have the other members of the investigative committee, and then they sit down with the licensee, and if the licensee retains counsel, counsel will be there as well. There is an opportunity prior to all this for the licensee to make sure that they acquire the documentation related to the allegations. Since we're dealing with essentially medical records, don't expect to get anything that's unredacted. Most of the information the licensee should be familiar with, but if they're not familiar with it, that's why we ask. And it's also something where obviously your attorney's not there, so they need to see the information as well. So everybody's on the same page. The PT board, these meetings typically go like this. You sit there, they tell you why you're there, what the allegation is. They may or may not tell you who the allegation was from. Most of the time, no, they don't, but you can figure it out. It's pretty straightforward because, like I said, you get a copy of the actual complaint, can submit it by the complainant. Sometimes, or I would say most of the time, their information is redacted out. You can't even see their name or anything like that, but you can figure it out. So from there, they go over all that information, and then they just open it up like, hey, what happened? Give us your side of the story. And this is obviously extremely important because they're only going to see two sides of the story, right? They're going to see this side of the story from the complainant, and the complainant could be a patient, ex-patient. It could be a supervisor. It could be a coworker, ex-coworker. It could be a relative of a patient. It's a lot of different people that I've seen file these types of complaints against physical therapists in North Carolina. So you're either they're only going to hear their side of the story, or they're going to hear your side of the story as well. And you want to make sure that you're truthful first and foremost. You cannot go in there, I'm going to lie, I'm going to get one past these people, blah, blah, blah. That's not going to work. And it's going to compound your problem. And it's just never a good idea. You want to be honest. Also, you don't want to give up information that you don't need to. If somebody asks you a question, you really don't need to go in a long, meandering story about how this happened and that happened, because you might walk yourself into a new complaint that has nothing to do with the original complaint. Or you might confuse them to the point where they think that you are admitting to something and you're not, right? So if you do one of these investigative meetings with the PT board, you want to make sure that you keep your answers succinct, to the point. And if you have an open-ended question, which they probably will ask, you want to have a very succinct story of like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Prepare a timeline ahead of time is always useful. That way you can have a pretty good idea of like where in time certain things happened and with who. So those are pretty much the main things that happen in the PT board cases early on. Now, the other thing I like about the PT board is after this is done, they will pretty much tell you, all right, give us a little time. We're going to come back and we're going to deliberate, and we're going to let you know what our recommendation is. The recommendation could be a dismissal. There's nothing here. You didn't do anything wrong. Via con dias, have a nice day. Or, hey, we think you did do something wrong. Here's what we're offering as a resolution to it. They're not going to have anything in writing right away. Even if it's a dismissal, it's still going to take some time for them to send it to you. Or if you're represented by counsel, they'll send it to your attorney. And if it is something that you're going to be required to do something, like do some continuing education, you'll get the opportunity to accept that or reject that and do the continuing education or not. That's up to you. If, say, and I'll just take worst case scenario, say they say, hey, we want to suspend your license for 12 months. You're like, I don't want to do that. That's bad. I'm not going to do that. Unless there's a summary suspension, which is supposed to be only done in very specific circumstances and cases. But assuming there's no summary suspension, you can say, no, I don't want to do the suspension. And can I still work? Yes, you can still work. B, well, what is going to happen next? Are they going to have another different step, or am I going to go straight to hearing? With the PT board, you get that set for hearing after that. Technically, the investigative committee will recommend something to the board, and then the board will come back and say, yeah, we think there's discipline here, go ahead and go forward. So that's technically the next step. But realistically speaking, once the investigative committee says, hey, we want to do this, and it's rejected by the licensee, I would be surprised if the actual couple members of the board after the investigative committee say, no, we're not going to do anything. That's not typically how that works. So that's why I say it would go to a hearing at that point. With the hearing, I'll be honest, I have not, as of today, had to have a hearing with the PT board. It's one of the better boards to deal with, so we typically get things resolved, either dismissal or some sort of like very small, non-punitive outcome. If there's something very egregious, and I think part of it is I've not had anything very, very egregious that's popped up. Kudos to physical therapists for being apparently very ethical. I have seen things that I've seen online where there's been discipline, and usually it's kind of like this with physical therapists. Either the alleged infraction is very minuscule and not very serious, or it is very serious and they're going to want some sort of heavy discipline on it. So that's why I say if there's something that is going to involve a suspension and that recommendation is rejected by the licensee and then sent over to the board for essentially ratification of that recommendation, and it's still rejected by the licensee, a hearing's going to happen. If you go to a hearing and you win, case over, resolved, and it'll be dismissed and you're done. If you go to a hearing with the board and the penalty is whatever, it could be a public reprimand, it could be a suspension, it could be revocation, it's not technically over at that point. You could still appeal that to Superior Court wherever you live. It could be whatever county in North Carolina that you live in, and you can appeal it to your Superior Court. Superior Court is the highest non-appellate state court level in the state of North Carolina. So that's going to be where your felonies are going to be, unless it's an HRI felony, and that's going to be where civil matters that are $25,000 or more end up. So it's the higher level trial court, basically. So you appeal it up to Superior Court, and they do basically a review on a record on appeal. Not to get in the nuts and bolts of it, I'll include the petition for judicial review video pretty soon, so you'll be able to click on that and watch that for more information on how appeals from final agency decisions occur. So say you appeal to Superior Court and it goes your way, the Superior Court is going to say, all right, well, we're going to reverse the decision of the board, or we're going to remand it back to the board, and this is going to be our instructions for a new hearing, basically. So that's kind of long and short of it. And if for some reason you have an appealable issue from actual Superior Court, you can go to Court of Appeals and then Superior Court, but you actually have an appealable issue. If something is coming from a board, you have an automatic right to appeal. You don't even have to have any sort of appealable issue where somebody did something procedurally incorrect. So I hope that was helpful. I want to say a big thank you to all the physical therapists out there. I've had physical therapy before. It is extremely helpful. So tip of the cap to all you ladies and gentlemen out there that do physical therapy work. Very much need it. So thank you guys again, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day. If you have any questions, please check out the videos on this YouTube channel. If you can't find what you're looking for there, check out the blogs on my fancy website, northstatelawfirm.com. I got a blog section there along with some other information. And then also give my office a call, 919-521-8810. We can get text at the number as well. And you can set up a call with one of my staff members, and it is free. Free 15-minute discovery call. So thank you again for checking this out. Check out the other video on appeals from board decisions up to Superior Court. It's by petition for judicial review, but you'll see that there. So thank you, and thank you so much for helping out North Carolina. I hope everybody has a great day. Bye-bye.